Hey guys, I'll be giving my presentation. It's not live because me and my three group mates are currently working as this class is happening. So Frank was nice enough to let us pre-record it and send it to him as a recording. He's going to play it for you guys and hope it's not super weird. I'm hoping one of my classmates is in the class so that he can answer any questions that you guys or Frank may have at the end of the presentation. Without further ado, we'll get it started. I just need to share my screen. All right. Okay, so our focus topic was Douglas fir timber production. It was done by me, Jack Porter, Connor Harkey, and Tyler Bloyd. So, so the Douglas fir is also known as a false hemlock. There are two types of Douglas fir in North America, including the Pacific Coast type, which is ones we'll see here in Oregon. It ranges from British Columbia down through Oregon and Washington and into California, down to Central California, actually. And there's also a Rocky Mountain variety of this Douglas fir, and it'll range also from British Columbia, but down through the Rocky Mountains and the Sierras, and even into northern Mexico. So the Douglas fir is actually considered to be the most important timber species in the United States, obviously, as well as the state of Oregon, Washington. It yields more timber than any other tree in North America. It's super useful. It's the state tree of Oregon, and it yields more than any other tree because of it. It grows fast. Um, there's large stands of it, especially in Oregon, and yeah, and they're relatively large trees. Some of the larger trees in North America, actually. It prefers sun and moist, well drained soil, like any other tree would, really. But the thing is, it's fast growing, which makes it really ideal for logging and timber production. Um, it has the ability to germinate and grow in the shade of other trees and then overtake them eventually. It's a really strong tree. And today, most Douglas fir timber actually comes from second growth plantation trees. So that's where we get most of our lumber products. And so these are just kind of common pests and disorders of Douglas fir. Things like aphids, moths, mites, beetles, borers, stuff like that are um, really common pests that can do a lot of damage. And then it has its array of diseases that are mainly attributed to environmental factors like frost, such as what we saw just a couple weeks ago. If you are out here in the metro area, kind of you'll have seen that a lot of trees out here froze and the limbs just break off when a wind comes through, and it does a lot of damage to trees. Um, and then wind is also a big factor, especially when you get into those higher elevations. It can really do a lot of damage to trees that aren't protected by surrounding foliage. Mineral deficiencies, of course, if the soil's not good and ideal, then it'll cause a Douglas fir not to take off and grow or just to be weak its whole lifespan. Um, Poor water factors into that as well. We don't really have a huge issue with that in Western Oregon. We obviously get a lot of rain, so we don't really have a lot of issues. Douglas fir can grow really well in this climate where there's a lot of rain. Um, yeah, and fires too. Fires are a big problem. If forest fires come through, they're going to weaken a ton of trees and kill a ton of trees. It weakens stands as a whole and makes it really difficult for trees in that area to grow, and it targets those trees for incoming pests and disease, which can spread throughout a stand and render an entire area useless as far as timber goes. So the primary pests that we're going to be talking about today are the Douglas fir beetle, the flathead fir borer, sorry, and the Douglas fir engraver beetle. And we'll talk more about those now. Starting with the Douglas fir beetle, it has one generation per year, and the broods they develop underneath the bark, and they develop throughout the summer and into early fall, and they overwinter in the tree as larvae and come out in late spring, early summer to start feeding on the trees. Um, and they attack usually during the summertime, which will be a common trend throughout these three pests that we're going to talk about today. Summertime is when a lot of these pests do their damage. They come out in the spring, stay hidden in the winter, and aren't super noticeable in the winter time. Summer's when you're really going to notice the damage to these trees and stands. So damage signs for the Douglas fir beetle are there's a kind of a reddish orange frass, looks like tunnels that the beetle is kind of dug through where it's ate. It comes up as kind of a reddish orange, so it does stand out. You're able to see it really well. It pops out on the tree. And if a beetle is present and there's an attack happening within the tree currently, a clear resin will actually exude from the damage area or an area where a beetle is present and attacking. So those are good signs. This is something you can spot while it's happening. Unfortunately, they're just really hard to get rid of, like other pests in timber. They're hard to get rid of during an attack or when they're present. And another really easy to identify thing is the needles from infected trees will obviously change from green, which they typically are, to a yellow and eventually brown. You see a lot of overhead shots, at least I did when I was researching damage of stands that are completely yellow, or you see blotches in like kind of drone shots. You see blotches of yellow and brown, and it's actually super scary because there's a lot of trees that are affected by this. Yeah, and they are usually initialized by a disturbance, as I previously stated, like snow or frost, wind. Just a tree being weakened by environmental factors causes these things to really take root in a stand. Um, and they're capable of building populations in a stand and then bouncing from tree to tree. It can start in one damaged tree, and then they're going to move around. So it's really vital that you notice a tree that has the damage and uproot it, get it out of there, because they will spread like a lot of pests in timber. The next pest we're going to talk about is the flathead fir borer. Um, they can have a longer lifespan than just a year if they are in a good food source, which wouldn't typically be the case in like a burnt tree or something like that. But if they take root in a healthy stand for whatever reason, they will thrive and last longer than a year. Just similar to the previous pest, they emerge March, April, in spring and do a lot of their damage in the summertime. And it's actually the larvae that do a lot of the damage as the eggs are laid in the bark crevices. And as soon as they hatch, the larvae will split off and start eating the bark of the tree right away, which significantly weakens the tree. And one thing about these borers is they have wings, so they can easily fly from tree to tree, lay their eggs, and fly from tree to tree. So these are uh, definitely a problem. Um, yeah, in the winter they spend on the outer bark of the tree. Uh, so these borers can affect roots as well. They can attack roots of trees that are exposed. Super common for roots to be exposed, especially in large trees. They can attack those, which is really dangerous because that's obviously where the tree gets its water from. And it's really difficult to spot an infestation until it's already done its damage. They don't show a lot of signs on the tree that would typically be displayed in something like the Douglas fir beetle. Um, yeah, so it's basically just you notice that the tree's dead and the signs of who was there or what pest was there, and that's when you know when it's already too late. Um, yeah. So the next is the Douglas fir engraver beetle. These beetles generally have one generation per year, but can have up to two, and they usually emerge and attack in the spring. Kind of a common trend for these timber-related pests. And the egg gallery is constructed in the cambium layer, often forming in vertical branches. So they'll form a lot of the time in the smaller branch of the trees, smaller area of the tree, such as the top, and just weaker, smaller branches, and in smaller trees as well, which is definitely a problem if you're trying to grow a stand of trees. Um, yeah, these things will take in and attack adolescent trees as well. Um, yeah, so they feed under the bark, and a way to kind of distinguish this from a different pest is the size of the emergence holes and the distinctive look of the egg galleries, as well as the location being kind of in the branches of the trees in the smaller areas. Uh, and like the others as well, they prefer to attack weakened trees, whether that's by fire, wind, frost, or root damage. And yeah, the stand conditions and weather obviously greatly affect this beetle, and just it should show that having an ideal stand of trees, an ideal area that maybe doesn't get the worst of weather, especially when you're talking about like trees that are going to be harvested. It's really important to have a good area for those trees. It's really crucial. A lot of the preventative measures come in the planting stage when it comes to large trees like the Douglas fir. So, like I just said, one of the main IPM strategies is just preventative management, being making sure that the soil's good, well drained, full of nutrients. The tree can get plenty of sun. Sorry, it's in an area that gets a lot of rainfall, water, um, and isn't and is surrounded by protective foliage as well. So yeah, the prevention, making sure to salvage and withdraw trees that are damaged, areas that are damaged, getting them out of stands that are to be harvested is super important when preventing pests in Douglas fir. And these are all things that need to happen before the trees are attacked. Once it's afterwards, you can remove them, hope for the best. But the big thing is just setting up a good area. And, the planting process is huge when it comes to logging. It's really important within the state. If you haven't noticed that, reforestation is super important, and it's just making sure that these like really good areas that have good soil, well drained, uh, are where you plant your trees. Um, yeah, and then hazard rating and stand manipulation, just identifying high hazard stands and not using those in timber production, not targeting those as um, with logging operation, obviously important. Uh, and there's also step 3. There's trap trees and baits that are often used in like really high value areas, and what companies will do is they'll have a stand of trap trees that they will attract the beetles and borers in the area too, and then promptly remove those once they notice that the pest is taken in, getting rid of the pest from the ecosystem as a whole, using trees that are using like fallen logs or just dead trees as a base camp, where they can attract a lot of pests and then promptly get rid of those. There's also anti-aggression pheromones, and these are really used to protect high-value trees. They're pheromones that you place on the trees that give out a signal to other beetles and borers that say that this area is populated already, and it detracts um, beetles from entering that area. It's obviously super hard. It's obviously not like a super easy thing to just spray chemicals on a tree. That's why these are mainly used in really high value areas, to just prevent a population of pests from taking it in the first place. Um, yeah, so making sure to regenerate, or favor appropriate species during the thinning. It will reduce mortality, and just practices that will maintain your tree's vigor, as in kind of clearing out the area, making sure that the tree has a really good a really good environment to grow and become strong, because a strong tree will not attract pests. It won't be weakened to the point where pests are going to want to attack and eat those trees. Yeah. Oh, and as well, it's why a lot of why these logging roads are off limits to the public. A lot of these areas are off limits to the public. It's to protect trees from any unnecessary damage. These trees are really highly protected because it's really vital to the economy. So making sure that these areas are not highly trafficked is important. Causes stress to the environment, causes stress to the trees. just making it that much more likely that they'll be attacked. So there are some natural control predators, like wasps and flies that eat larvae of beetles and borers. And then woodpeckers as well. They'll also eat borers out of the trees. Woodpeckers obviously really common in the state, but obviously it's not really something. I don't feel that logging companies are introducing woodpeckers into a population to prevent pests, but they are a natural predator for these pests, and they're super common around. So they do some damage to the borer population, but not as much to beetle populations. There are also other beetles that are native that attack the Douglas fir beetles. And then climate and weather, it can be a negative. It can be something that causes pests to be attracted to an area, but it can also kill them off. Like, as we experience here a lot of the time, are cold spells in the early fall and springtime. It's often still really cold in Oregon, and we still get a lot of rainfall even through the summer. And this affects the population of the beetles. They obviously thrive in the warmer time of the years. That's why they come out and hatch in the spring and summer. And cold spells will really affect the population. So it's why Oregon's such a good place for Douglas fir production, is because we have a lot of rain. It's honestly cold year round. It's never really, we don't have entire summers that we don't have rain. So rainfall is a big factor in pest prevention and strengthening trees as well. So that's the presentation. See if I can get out of this. Uh, that's our presentation. If you guys have any questions, like I said, hopefully Connor or Tyler are in the class and they can answer any questions you guys have. Thanks for working with me. Thanks for dealing with the weirdness of this being pre-recorded. I hope everything turned out well and it's easy to digest. And thank you, thank you, Frank, for allowing me to pre-record this. It was really helpful. So thank you. And again, any questions, go ahead and ask them. Thank you.